nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. We're a little late coming out of executive session, but we're ready to go, and I'm seeing a table that is perhaps newly refurbished or different, but I don't know what to do, but I think we might as well go ahead and start. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Did I hear, see anything that came across? Are we good?
Did we appoint the board clerk pro tem?
I don't think we... Because Kira was here last time.
That we appoint Jenny Bishop as the board clerk pro tem.
I'll second.
Without any objection, all in favor? That's everyone? So there you go, Johnny. Now you're part of the team. Again, are there any modifications?
Where's Bob? We did that supplemental. I'm sorry, it was supplemental.
But I didn't see it in a paper copy version.
Because we still have it, he had one name on it.
Yeah, he has one, and he doesn't.
But that's supplemental.
We can add that.
Yeah, well, it is being added, and other than that, without objection, we'll go with that modification, and we'll keep moving along. Public and staff, and Pat.
Thanks for the opportunity to address you this evening. My remarks concern the academic progress of New Roots Charter School as they relate to their required benchmarks. In a recent proposal before the Ithaca City Common Council, a private developer put forth a proposal that the city loan money for the purpose of buying and renovating the old Masonic Temple. New Roots is named as the anchor tenant of this project, where they will relocate from the State Theater space and will have a cafeteria to house their lunch program. If the building is purchased by the not-for-profit seeking to develop this project, the Masonic Temple will come off the tax rolls, and the loss to ICSD would be about $12,000. Any future development of this site and the potential for school taxes generated by this development will also be lost. To document the soundness of the tenancy, New Roots officials submitted a statement that, quote, based on the analysis of evidence from their May 2011 evaluation visit, New Roots is on trajectory towards meeting its qualitative educational benchmarks. What the proposal does not include is a statement on meeting its quantitative benchmarks, which are absolute requirements that must be met for renewal. Some of those quantitative benchmarks are provided here tonight on the charts I have prepared for the board. I guess they're making their way around. These are drafts compiled from the raw data provided by New Roots and Ithaca High School of the June 2012 Regents exams results. Thank you, Mr. Powers, for that. Since the charter requires that, quote, each year the percent of all tested students are enrolled in at least their second year and performing at or above level 3, which is 65 or above on Regents exams, will be greater than that of the students in the same tested grade in the local school district. This criteria has not been met on any single exam in 2012. New Roots Charter also states that each year 75% of students in the 4-year high school accountability cohort will have scored at least 65 on the New York State Regents exams. New Roots has never tested all of its cohort for each of their exams. But in any case, you can see from the charts that they have, in very rare cases, met that benchmark of 75% of their students scoring 65 or better. So my advice to all of you is, I hear talk, but let the data talk. Let it do the talking. According to this data, New Roots is meeting neither of its vital benchmarks for renewal. In the spring, when state report cards come out, we'll produce a more complete report on all schools in Tompkins County. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Adam Piasecki, ITA President.
Hi, good evening. Just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, in case you haven't heard on the radio or on the internet, that we have 4 Ithaca teachers who have received Apple for the Teacher Award this year, and it's not really being talked about. So I'm here to let you know that Steve Kirsch from Boynton, Dara Nisi from LACS, Judy Kogan from Ithaca High School, and Diane Hallett from Northeast have been recognized or in the running for the further competitions. They have a little bio on WHCU870.com, and just wanted to end the record the wonderful teaching that's going on, and it is being recognized by the administrators who are writing the proposals for these people to be honored, and the parents and even the students. And just one thing, I haven't heard much about it in the past few weeks, but when I pop into the elementary schools and do my visits, I'm still hearing the concern about the early start time, and now it's even before 7:30, so if teachers aren't ready by 7:20, 7:25, the kids are coming in. There was snow in the hills of Caroline and Brookendale today, and the early start time is a concern. And I think we've talked about this before. It was 7:55, then 7:40, then 7:30, and now it's 7:25. So I don't know if there's an answer, but it's still something that's coming up, and I hope we can address that. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. That's everyone that's signed up. Anyone else? That's anyone. So thanks for that, and so we'll move on to students and go right to Ithaca High School.
The 10 weeks just ended. Report cards will be coming out for all Ithaca High School students within the next 2 weeks. Fall sports have just ended, and the winter sports kickoff will be tomorrow at 7 p.m. in Culp. There's a student concern regarding existing athletic facilities that were not either updated or constructed through the really expansive and innovative weight room and other facilities that were constructed during that time. But for existing facilities such as the gym and the pool, and what improvements those will be going through for the next couple of years.
It is of student concern that student rights of freedom of speech in recent incidents involving social media. Many students are concerned that their freedoms of speech have been restricted. Also, a new student resource officer has been put in the high school, and by talking to a bunch of students who attend Ithaca High School, not many people know about it, and I think that it's a great idea that there is this student resource officer, but I think it's very important to notify the students that this officer is here, because I think if you don't inform the students, it's kind of becomes a concern, and some students get upset. And also, this is more of kind of like a personal issue between the board reps. I know you refer to your Dropbox a lot, and it would be kind of nice if we had access to that, and also involving like open meeting laws and such. So
yeah, I mean, student resource officer, I think he's meant to be as much of a resource to students as anything else. So if students don't know that he's there, then it's more difficult to take advantage of the services he's providing. So I mean, I think it's just as much of a benefit to students as it is to administrators for everyone to know what's going on there, and I think it'll be helpful in the end. And again, a lot of these issues are just ones of communication or a lack of communication between either the board and students or the administration and students. So we're still working on ways to try and facilitate more communication between the two groups.
Yeah.
So I think things like I don't know if that was Dr. Brown, but the Twitter feed. I know whenever we open the computers in the library, that's right there. So things like that are a great way for the board to communicate with students as well as for administrators to communicate with students. So we're open to listening about all of these things. And I think a lot of times it really is just an issue of miscommunication as opposed to people being out to get students or whatever. That obviously that's not what's going on. But it can be cleared up with better communication.
Anything else? Well, we'll go over to LACS, then board responses.
Okay, so the first cycle of our school year has ended last Friday. And this past weekend, teachers have been hard at work writing student evaluations. which is pretty much a way for them to send out a small form saying, this is all the things that your student has done this past cycle to the parents, and we found it a very valuable way to get feedback. And with the end of that cycle, the beginning of the new cycle, which began today, and students were assigned second cycle projects, which are pretty much clubs built into the school day. And of course, there's a wide variety of things from extracurricular activities to just getting help with work. And we're looking forward to see how second cycle works out. And our annual pasta dinner is coming up very soon on December 5th. We are starting to plan it out, and it's going to be at the IHS cafeteria, I do believe. And that's pretty much all that we have coming up.
Very good. Thanks. Board responses? Go ahead, Albert.
Just a question to the board and the young people from IHS. I wasn't aware that we have anybody in the schools yet as an SRO. The city just recently had their budget determinations and decided that it's something that they agreed to in principle, and it certainly hasn't come before us yet, because we think you'd probably be here, because we would be voted on in public. So I think this is an area where there is miscommunication, because you seem to believe something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. I didn't want to act like I didn't know what was going on, but Elder and I had heard the same, that the city had said, okay, we will approve a school resource, an SRO, as long as the district pays for it. So, oh, okay. But anyway, but
Mr. Trumbull we've had some early communication and conversations with the police department, but we are prepared to offer recommendations to the board yet for approval, and we have not engaged Mr. Powers and his staff. So I would love to hear more about this student resource officer.
Is there somebody like walking around the high school? So I mean, you heard that there was a proposal, or?
I heard from my dad, who heard it on the radio.
So you didn't meet an officer in the hallways?
No,
okay.
No, I did not.
Well, so, okay, well, communication, good. I'm understanding. Okay, good.
I guess if you're going to put a police officer in the high school, I think it's important to tell the students first.
Mm-hmm. We agree.
Yeah. And it was just because there's been previous communication issues between the students and administration. Sure. And I think that would be important.
Exactly. Go ahead, Jim.
I don't know if Brad was going to speak to this as well, but at the facilities committee, we've had some conversations about both the pool and the gym. I'm sure the next conversations, particularly given some of the warping in the gym that's been taking place, we'll probably have an additional conversation. But our expectation is that there will be some plans put in front of us to do some upgrades to both of those spaces over the summer, and I think that's the plan. If not this summer, then I think they're talking about next winter, depending on how we work out the schedule and get things through. But without question, it's on. We're very much aware that both those places are in need of improvements, and they should be coming from.
They're both up for discussion at the next finance committee meeting, finance and facilities. So we're aware.
Right, and during just background during the original scope of discussion and work to go forward, it was all the projects were listed and discussed, and at that point it was not known how much work could be done in the existing facilities. Locker room renovations were done. There were certain work done in there, right, the wrestling room. Right. But how much work could we do in the pool, and how much work in the main gym was left out of it, just because at that point did not know where the prices would be, where the costs would be, how much funds, if any, would there be left within that $98 million bond referendum to do any extra work, other work that is needed in the district. So we've been working through that over the last few years. Added a new roof at Cuga Heights. That was not a part of the original. Added the district-wide wireless project. That's an add-on, just so everybody knows. We have added on other projects as we've gotten closer and closer to the end of our big projects, and what is there left within the capacity of the bond referendum that meets the original language of what that bond was meant to do. So we're looking at those next few things, and what else can we do that's critical need for the district, and certainly that is a part of that.
When did you say plans to discuss those?
Yeah, when is the
Next finance committee meeting is the 26th of November.
Okay.
Is it 5?
Yes.
5. At the conference room down below.
So
I think it's on the agenda.
it's right. It's actually 6. Well, no, it's 6 o'clock.
6, I'm sorry.
Right, 6 o'clock on the 26th. Just to be clear. Go ahead, Chief.
I'd like to ask Pat a question. If the Masonic Temple goes off the tax rolls, does the Clinton House go back on?
The Clinton House actually
Is
on now.
Oh, it is?
Because it's privately owned.
Okay.
But this would be, Masonic Temple, the plan in the proposal would mean that it's owned by the same developer that owns Clinton House, but it would be in a not-for-profit status.
Okay.
And therefore, as a not-for-profit, it would come off the tax rolls. But interestingly enough, when you see the proposal, it only mentions the loss of city taxes. So I did speak to Common Council and said, you know, there are school taxes being lost here that aren't mentioned when you talk about taking a building off the tax rolls. So, thank you.
And Pat, if I'm not mistaken, from what I read, the Masonic Temple would come under the umbrella of the State Theater Group. You know that.
Yeah. Exactly. Some sort of
that entity. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? Jay, go.
Maybe the superintendent wants to address the Dropbox that they've mentioned.
Yeah, and we are working through how we know how to make the Dropbox public. We're going to provide, we're going to enhance the Board of Education's website, and on that website we're going to provide a link that will provide everyone access to the documents, the agenda, the personnel the reports, everything that's not confidential. You'll have access to when clicking on that Dropbox. We should have it available for the November 27th meeting. Other tools, board docs, school board docs, other tools are out there that we could use to provide this kind of access. They're rather pricey. We're using a tool that, quite frankly, is a free tool, and it's an app. And so and it's been able to do all the things that we wanted to do. But providing that public space for everyone to access is something we'll have for the November 27th.
Yeah.
Just regarding the website, are there going to be updates made to other areas, such as the athletic page, where like results can be shown of teams and other?
That was one of the things I was going to bring up in the super section. The first focus group has met. We're redesigning our website, so we've we have teachers. We've had teachers come. We're going to be talking to community folks, a bunch of other stakeholder groups to talk about our redesign efforts and what we want in the website. My Superintendent's Advisory Council of Students is going to be talking about what they would like to see in our new and revised website. We don't know how long it may take to do the complete makeover. We're hoping early spring we're able to launch a new site, but the social networking aspects that we've begun to use will be a key part of that. I've seen some initial designs and some initial thinking, and the Twitter feed, which I'm happy to be following the Twitter feed, will be prominent, and some other things as well. But we have a Facebook site now, a Twitter feed, YouTube site as well. So there's quite a few things out there right now, but we know we need to do an overall scope too.
And Dr. Brown, can our board reps for LECS and Ithaca be part of that?
Focus groups, yeah.
You know, you have your advisory group, but it would be good if we had these guys involved so they can report back. You know, okay, good.
I just want to say that was, you know, we said a lot of stuff, and I think overall this school year has been off to a particularly good start. I'm a senior now, and I think this is probably the smoothest start to a school year that we've had so far. So I think we owe a lot of gratitude to Mr. Powers for his leadership in that
area. And being a senior, we'll make sure that the applications out there know that you are being very nice to
Cornell. If anyone from Cornell is listening.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's out, right, it's out there. That, we're appreciating the efforts of the education community, exactly, and those who might write recommendations for you now and in the future. So we good? Move on. On to consent agenda. Thank you all. Thanks. That's very good.
I'll move the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second by Pat. Any questions? You have the one modification.
I had the one addition.
Right, one addition. Seconded. Any questions? I guess I already asked that. All in favor? That's going to be everyone. So, which includes the does include the minutes that Jenny's been working hard to update, and we'll get those out to the website, and we should be up to date now on those items that we are certainly obligated to get out as ASAP after our meetings, and so we appreciate Jenny's effort on that. Working multiple tasks as we are looking to add a board clerk. Jenny is not the board clerk. She is the pro tem, but she is an associate of Dr. Brown in his office. So we appreciate Jenny's efforts now and in the future. Was that enough sucking up? I mean, yeah. I'm trying. I'm working. I'm working. So we appreciate those efforts, and Dr. Brown, I think we appreciate your efforts as well. But it is superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. I'll turn it over to Mr. Powers and his team, because as always, we love to bring in new, great talent to our organization. And we have two folks that you've approved tonight that we wish to introduce you to. Ms. Powers?
So, thank you. It's my great honor and privilege this evening to introduce to you Mr. Kima Killens and Ms. Martha Hardesty, who will be joining our team as associate principals in the building. Ms. Killens starts tomorrow morning, and Ms. Hardesty starts the first week of December, and we're thrilled to have them aboard and to have our team in place ready to work for our kids. So thank you for your support through the process, and we welcome them to Ithaca High School.
Thank you.
You can speak now, saying how wonderful it is to be here, or you don't have to. But feel free if you wish.
Well, go ahead. I've been shadowing for like the last 2 weeks, just trying to get myself familiar with the school and the students, and it has been a pleasure. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow being my first official day. I'll have my roller skates on, and I'll be ready.
I too look forward to starting soon. I wish I had had the opportunity to shadow as much up to this point, but being released by Trumansburg has taken a little effort. So I will start beginning of December, and looking forward very much to being part of the Ithaca High School community. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you.
A couple of announcements. Thank you. You're welcome. The accommodation ceremony will be on November 27th at 5:30 p.m. And some of the great folks that Adam mentioned earlier, educators and students will be recognizing for their outstanding efforts and achievements in this first quarter. Other things, the Winter Sports Night was mentioned. That's tomorrow night. And prior to the Winter Sports Night, we will have a signing day event. I think it'll be the first ever in our district. So we have quite a few Division I athletes, potentially, who are going to be signing their letters of intent tomorrow at 6:15, and I believe where it's going to be held, Mr. Powell?
It's in the Fine Arts Lounge. There's 12 in Division I and Division II combined.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. I'm going to read up from Glory Days and sign something too, and act like I'm just sign something. Sign me up. So some key events coming up. I just wanted the board and community to know about, and that will be all for tonight.
Well, very good, Dr. Brown.
The signing's in Culp.
Lounge.
Right, in the lounge area, the new Culp Atrium Lounge area, I believe. At 6:15, be there or don't sign. So, Dr. Brown, we're going to move on to school district business, I believe, and that's DASA training approval request.
Yes. The other we've done several trainings, and each of the trainings need to have a board approval. prior to or after they've been done. So this is one of those trainings that we needed to have approved. Do I need to add anything there, Mr. Mr. Trumbull?
So this is training that is going to occur on November 9th, because the fact that it's November 13th. But this was the first school board meeting that around about that date, so we're okay. DASA is the Dignity for All Students Act. This is one of the new regulations that all districts are dealing with and are rolling out, and this is one of the functions that has to, well, one of the activities that has to occur. And so that training is ongoing, and so we're going to approve it. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the DASA training for elementary ESPs on November 9th, 2012. That's the resolution. If I had a...
So moved.
Second.
And second by Judy. Thanks, Judy, for jumping in.
Yeah.
So any questions? All in favor? That's going to be everyone. All right. Now I'll move on to really a much more detailed item for our district is a continuous improvement plan for special education.
I'm going to invite some friends to the table. I know Dr. Bullock is here, Ms. Carr, Lee, Gendall is here. Some other people, if you come maybe to the chairs up close. Yeah. Sheila, I saw you back there, Sheila. Don't no.
I was hoping
that. All the folks who need to get the table, please come up. How about that? This is the way. Last spring, we said we would come to you with updates about this key initiative or a plan to move the district forward, particularly in the area of special education. And much work has been done. We have ways yet to go, but much work has been done. Tonight, I'm hoping just to share a few highlights myself, and then turn it over to you to ask questions, or to, if we have the experts who are in the room, the folks who've been leading this effort district-wide, have done quite a bit of work since last spring, are here tonight to just share some of their reactions and to hear from you. I'm sure there's some questions about where we are. But I thought I would just start with just refreshing the community and you about where we are and why we decided to go this route with this continuous improvement plan for special education. And of course, my computer would just freeze, and I'm going to have to do the technology is getting old out there. I see a new machine.
Oh, man.
In my future, everyone.
I'll take the old one.
I knew that was coming. Give me a second.
Maybe if it was a PC instead of one of those Apple things.
No, I don't think so.
I'm going to restart. I can talk through most of it.
We're just trying to kill time.
I see that. And it just froze. I'm going to start it over. I think it was a bad smart move.
Dr. Brown, you've talked about a continuous improvement plan for special education. You've also, from time to time, we've really talked about it really being more of a discussion about the education plan for the district. I'm not going to take words out of your mouth, but the idea that we have separate pre-K or separate special education from the general education, and that we're somehow segmented in what we do every day instead of what we try to say. We teach all students every day. That's our job. That's our mission. So
it is in the first two strategies in the plan. I'm just going to jump right into what Mr. Loring.
I have a question.
I know what. Yeah.
Jenny's new, and she might not know 4 people.
I don't know.
Wow. Okay. Well, could you introduce yourself for Jenny and the community, please?
I'm Lori Willick. I'm the behavior specialist for the school district. So apologies. Sheila McHenry, Director of Special Education.
Lee Ginenthal, teacher on special assignment.
Renee Carr, administrator for ICSD.
Go ahead.
And you mentioned this is a general education plan, and it is that the first two strategies speak to us improving our core programs. And we're happy to report since last spring we've done quite a bit to improve our core programs, particularly in area of language arts and mathematics. We're happy to say now we have, through the work that happened last year, we have a literacy framework for elementary that was developed with the help of many of our educators in the district. That work is being rolled out this year. We've also, as you know, because we had a work session on Singapore Math, we've identified a mathematics program. That work now at the elementary level is being rolled out from classroom to classroom, district to district. And in support of those two initiatives and two strategies, we've your support. You supported the teachers on special assignment. So they're leading release days that all educators at the elementary level are coming to and getting updated and trained and having deep conversations, professional and community conversations about those initiatives and how we're moving that work forward. At the secondary level, we know Mr. Trumbull is leading an initiative this year to develop a bit of a framework for the secondary level as well. We've heard from folks, yes, you're doing much of this at the elementary level, what's happening at the secondary level. So we're going through a similar process to develop common approaches at the secondary level as we're in connection to what's already happening at the elementary level. So y'all check it out. I'm gonna try and do this all in my head. How about that? I'm gonna try and go through all the strategies. If I leave one out, you jump in, because for some reason, I think I'm gonna switch to a PC, because this is not gonna work for me today. That have this one. Another strategy we've talked about that was in the plan, strategy number 4, if you're following in your plan, it talked about job-embedded professional development. We've done much with the teacher on special assignment, providing that job-embedded instructional coaching, and we have Mr. Lee Gidenthal here tonight, who's been that teacher on special assignment, providing that professional development, job-embedded instructional coaching, particularly in the area of inclusion and differentiation. We're in the process of, we have a design team in place right now that's looking at what an instructional coach model will look like across the district and to scale our current efforts. Mr. Landau and Mr. Trumbull are working through that right now. I think the first design team meeting is going to be held next week. And we hope to have a recommendation for the board and for the community as we enter into the budget season in February or March. Other strategies we talked about last year, one of the conversation last year started around preschool and kindergarten at this table. I remember some of us being shocked by the data around how many young people were being referred to special education coming out of preschool and into kindergarten. And then we're looking at the data even more closely. We recognize that most of those young people were being referred to special education because of their speech and language acquisition issues. So the board supported the inclusion of 4 instructional coaches for speech and language acquisition last spring. We've rolled that model out. We've hired some outstanding people who are now working very closely with our elementary schools daily, and also working very closely with the principals and pushing in the classrooms to help our educators understand how to teach and help young people with speech and language acquisition issues across the board in kindergarten and first grade. In the second half, we've done the gap and get more specific. The other piece we talked about last year was having a way to systematically monitor the educational benefit of special education. We talked about that term. What does educational benefit mean? We talked about that last spring. And how do you systematically monitor the data that would show whether or not special education was working? We knew when we talked about this last spring there was a need for a universal screening tool. The RTI committee, that's a district-wide committee, met last year and they identified a universal screening tool. We have not rolled that tool and platform out yet. We're in the process of reviewing if that tool is still appropriate, and also putting together a structure and some teams to work through what it would look like to roll that out. What I've learned is rolling out a universal screening tool district-wide takes a significant amount of infrastructure, technology infrastructure, and then some staff development on the other side. And if not doing it well or rushing it, it can fail. So we're taking this year to really evaluate and study what it would look like to have a universal screening tool across the organization to provide that pre-assessment of sorts, to understand where our young people are in education, who need special services, and then how well we're doing. And with that, those are some highlights. I just hit on a couple of highlights that that are part of this plan. The team is here to probably share a few additional thoughts and highlights. I think I did a better job than going through some slides anyway. But some things that I missed, maybe Sheila or Dr. Willard?
Perhaps since we have Lori here, she can speak to our initiative, PBIS, and what we're doing in that area.
So one of our goals was to implement positive behavior supports in all schools, school-wide, and so there have been several school teams who are going through some training at OC and BOCES around positive behavior intervention supports, and that's a big way of saying the behavioral side of RTI, so looking at rolling out
universal supports for all students by having some positive behavioral expectations school-wide and having a systemic way to reinforce those behaviors and then respond when there are behavioral issues. So in terms of discipline piece, but also in terms of interventions for kids who need targeted and more intensive supports as well behaviorally.
And we have several schools that have started participating in these trainings. I guess it was fall, October. One of the schools, Ball Creek, is in its second year. We have the high school on board, and we hope to get other schools on board for September of 2013.
So, any other highlights? Early with
As you well know, Board, this plan has 10 strategies. And Sheila and I sat down and looked at all the 10 strategies. We were amazed at how many things are already in process. And those that are not in process are getting ready to evolve. So this is really good. This is a very comprehensive plan, as you well know. And so as we dissect it, and as we begin to take a look at each part, we will provide updates to you so that the next time we meet, we will have specific updates regarding the strategies and exactly what has happened and what is going to be happening.
And we've shared in Dropbox the project charter that's guiding our work, which speaks to some timelines and persons of primary responsibility. So we would ask you to take a look at that because we're on schedule for this particular project. There were some lofty goals in there. We said last year, by 2015, we would eliminate disproportionate identification and disproportionate achievement. I mean, essentially we're saying we would eliminate achievement gaps in 3 years. And frankly, if we do the things in that plan, there's no reason why we shouldn't. But we've all learned and we all know that there's some significant culture shifts that need to occur to do those things, along with some resources, which the board has been very supportive of providing the resources to do these things. But then a lot of hard work. and that's what we're in year one, or the first few months, apparently. One of the questions we received from the Special Education PTA was, what will classrooms look like when this is done? And when thinking about that question, which was a great question, I looked at an expert. I said, Lee, help me with that one. and Lee had an outstanding answer, so I will put that question in front of the board tonight. What will classrooms look like when we've done this and we've eliminated achievement gaps according to the plan?
Classrooms aren't going to miraculously be different at the end of the year when we've worked our way through this plan, or even by the end of 2014. Dr. Brown spoke about cultural shifts, and those things take time. We can provide training for folks on differentiated instruction. Folks can master all the research-based instructional techniques, but when they go into a classroom, we're still dealing with issues of perception and belief systems on the part of educators and administrators of all staff, where we have perceived low achievers and perceived high achievers. And as long as that belief system continues, they might have the tools in the kit, but they're using them deferentially, and that's not helping everyone. So part of what we've got to work on is the job-embedded training. We have to work on changing belief systems, and that doesn't happen in a meeting where you say, this is the right way to think. But it involves in providing experiences for staff members and coaching them through those pieces, and then reflecting on what happens when they've tried these techniques with students, taking a look, increasing awareness. Over time, as the awareness increases, perceptions start to change. When perceptions start to change, expectations start to change. And you build that over time, you end up with belief system change. We've got some pilots running in some schools already where teachers are doing peer observation, where they're going into classrooms looking for specific things. Each teacher, when they participate in this, goes through training, and when they're observed, they have to identify perceived low achievers and perceived high achievers. That process of even naming those kids, it's putting some things on the table that folks haven't been willing to look at or deal with. In terms of special education teachers and co-teaching, all of a sudden the special education teacher has to say, well, I'm also teaching the other kids in the class. and not just working with the perceived low achievers. So it's shifting those things. Folks go in and they sit and they learn how to observe and code behaviors and chart without being judgmental. Then we come back and we talk about what we've seen, and the ahas are there. People see differences. If you go about saying, this is the wrong way to do it, you have to do it this way, it doesn't work. It's those concerted efforts, small efforts to push the wheel that brings about that long-term change.
Quick question about the belief system.
Go ahead.
It's been some of my experience in education leads me to believe that one of the easiest ways to change belief systems is to put teachers in front of classes that are diverse, so the students and the peers look at those people and change their belief system. Seems like we're putting, well, your statement would lead one to believe that we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of changing the existing mindset of the teaching core we have, right? I think the young people that I spend time with in this school district are in many ways out ahead of us. They see who's on television representing the United States. They see diversity. They don't see it in front of them, right? And this is both black and white, right? So the shift that we need in this district seems to be as much about who's in front of those classrooms and what the curriculum is that those kids are being exposed to, as opposed to all of the things that you just mentioned. Right now, given that you guys are here to speak to us about closing this gap, I just want you to be mindful that we are certainly mindful on this side of the table that we're just going to have to start changing who we present to these children and what we present to these children. I was in an art class a couple of weeks ago, took some things from my store to engage with the kids. They were making masks. I sell masks. One child said that one of my masks reminded him of Emmett Till, which shocked me. The conversation turned from art to a social, political, historical conversation about the importance of that child. No one in the room knew who Emmett Till was, with the exception of the teacher and the one child. I would think that plays as much of a role in disengaging young people than their perceived academic performance, if that makes sense. It's just one of those moments where you say to yourself, where the hell am I? Right? And then we had more conversations, and half of them didn't know who Anne Frank was. Right? It's just, and I respect this district, right? This is a district where we know we're actually being perceived as a well-performing district because we're sending lots of our kids to places where we want them to go. How can these cognitive disconnects exist here? That's what I'm struggling to figure out.
I don't think we're in any disagreement. The part I was talking to is, in my role as a staff developer, what I'm doing training-wise. We have been working on the hiring process. I sat in on that committee with Dr. James and started some good work, started to change the complexion of the teaching staff. We're looking at starting to revamp our curriculum because curriculum is sorely out of date. In fact, we can't even find it. And in looking at that, we're bringing in some folks to help us with that. So we'll be starting from a universal design perspective, focusing on thinking skills. We're talking a lot about culturally responsive teaching, and all that stuff will be part of the frame of the curriculum. So there's multi-pronged approaches, and I think we're on the same page.
In the plan, strategy 8 and 9 speak to leadership structures and personnel structures and shifts. And what's been done in HR over the last year has been impressive work, which has resulted in us bringing in some very talented people and retaining some very talented people. And it also resulted in us reorganizing central services, which some other strategies speak to how we're going to provide central support for this work to happen in schools, and we reorganize to do so.
I'm actually reassured that we've started to have honest conversations, and that a group of people can acknowledge that there are belief systems and there are perceptions, because a lot of people tell you that it's not there. And when we start having those conversations and acknowledge it, we'll start moving things forward. And the other thing that's really reassuring is when you look at this continuous improvement plan, there's names attached to assignments and expectations, so that leaves accountability, which is reassuring. So it puts some teeth to if we're not making progress or if we hit a stumbling block. Well, ultimately, who's responsible? Who's owning this? So I think, especially since we're speaking honestly and speaking openly and saying that certain perceptions exist and people are owning it, we can start making some progress, slow as it may be, because human nature and history can't change that overnight. This is actually reassuring.
Thanks. If I can add another thing, Chris. Besides working directly with teachers, I'm also working in classrooms with kids, modeling lessons so teachers can see other ways of interacting, and I'm working with kids, educating the kids on the same work that I'm doing with the adults, because they've got to be on the same page. We've all got to be speaking the same language. Some of the work I'm doing involves talking to kids about personality types and learning styles and the impact of that. At this point, there are whole grade levels in some buildings where all the kids have gone through that training, and they're starting to talk about how that impacts their education, their perceptions.
Seth?
Yeah. Lee, I just wanted to ask you, I heard you talk a lot about the changing of perceptions, and then I recalled, and I just quickly got the name of it. Apparently there was a study done down at the one of these schools in Virginia, I think it was UVA, about the importance of not so much looking at the work involving changing perceptions, but the change in behaviors, because what they discussed is how hard it is to change perceptions, but we could actually change behaviors and techniques and teaching. Can you're probably familiar with it, but
Yeah,
can you talk about that a little bit, and why we've chosen, why we, despite that study's findings, why we choose to focus on behaviors as opposed, perceptions and attitudes as opposed to, the behavior and techniques that you see in it, that you can observe and see in a classroom.
Sure. Maybe I wasn't clear, Seth. The piece we start with are the behaviors themselves. The teachers are practicing the behaviors. I call them interactions. Okay. That's the piece that they start with. They start changing what they're doing. Unless you do the reflection and connect that, you get that metacognition, so that they start then connecting the awareness to the behavior. It's not going to work. Some of the, I could talk about some of the sample interactions. It's pretty much common sense, but it's amazing when you work with folks how it's the things you forget. Equitable response opportunities. So you're sure when you're asking questions in a class, you call on everyone. Well, we know for sure special ed kids don't get called on, and teachers have all kinds of good intentions as to why they don't want to do that. They don't want to embarrass the kids. They assume the kid doesn't know the answer. It's going to slow down the class, and when you're trying to cover content to prepare for a high-stakes test, well, you can't do that. But years of a kid not being called on gives them a message. They don't have to participate in a class. They don't count. They become invisible. Proximity. Who does a teacher stand next to? Teachers typically teach to the front of the class and right down the middle. And who sits in the front? And who knows where to hide? And when teachers use proximity with a perceived low achiever, is it because the kid's good? Because they caught him messing up. So that starts giving messages. Delving, critical thinking skills. This is just a sample. They fit pretty much in 3 categories, because there's 3 things we can control in a classroom. We can control the learning opportunities we provide kids. We can control the feedback we give them. and we can control the relationship. And those three things are really powerful, so that every session I work with folks, we work on one specific behavior in each of those strands, and then they go out and for a month they practice, and then we come back and work on it. The work is based on research that's been around for a long time. The model of the program started in Los Angeles and the school district there back in the 70s. It was part of a training that was brought to this district back in 1985. I could share some of that stuff with you if you want to see copies of it.
And Dr. Brown, in the interest of full disclosure, I sat in the back next to the window. That's
you can't hide.
That's why typically tall kids get in the back. Just to switch gears slightly, I believe embedded in the plan is transition strategies.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, elementary, middle, high school.
Sure.
As I mentioned before, this is an improvement plan for the whole district, and so that's a subject we talked about. You know, isn't there some way to do this better?
Mr. Landau, Mr. Trump will speak to that. They've been working on it.
Yeah, so we're in the process of assembling teams focused specifically on transition between our buildings. Pulling together some research now so we can be more systematic in our approach, and it's not twin from one building to the next. So we are actively right now recruiting folks regardless of what their positions are in schools. Some schools have had teams designed around this for a number of years, others really haven't touched it much. So we think we're going to have those teams together probably by the middle of December and start formally meeting and have a few action plans together beginning this spring, so we're ready to start transitioning students this spring.
And some of the work, pre-K to K, the integration between those two programs has already happened. Mr. Landau, I must say, has done an outstanding job of bringing people together to have conversations about what that looks like, what it should look like, and making sure that folks know that the preschool is a part of the elementary school day and building. And I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to add a piece there, because we've done quite a bit of work in that area.
We've focused on a couple of things. One is we focused on principal development in that area, so principals felt comfortable leading a pre-K through 5 building. So large part of one of our principal meetings already this year was focused on some staff development for principals to get some good strategies for what to look for in a model pre-K classroom. To dialogue with some pre-K experts and teachers about what quality look-fors are in a pre-K class. Another thing that we've started, our first meeting is on Thursday, but we've developed a pre-K leadership team. So leaders from the pre-K group across all the 8 buildings, we have about 10 members of the team. We're going to meet once a month with the goal of how do we become a better building-based model. So I want to take all the expertise that's across the pre-K group of professionals and brainstorm ways that we can become a better building-based model without losing some of the things that made it a quality program before. So it's just been a lot of communication, and one of the goals of the group that people have already stated going in is they want to do a better job transitioning kids from pre-K to K, and so that's one of the stated goals of this pre-K leadership group too. So it's a very passionate group, a lot of just wonderful professionals in that group, and I'm just trying to get them all together and focus on this transition.
Could I jump in? Just a piece about LACS, because they're sometimes forgotten in this piece. They've got a system where at the end of each semester they have Google Docs where the teachers sit and write information about each kid that they think is important for the next teacher to know. I was sitting in with the teams of teachers today while they were working at it, taking a look at their language, taking a look at how their perceptions and expectations are right there in the words, and talking about the impact of how that is when a teacher then looks at this description of a kid. And folks were open, and we were practicing rewording, rethinking, reframing. That's where, the actual work happens right there with the teachers.
Just a word about transition. I meet with the district chairs on a monthly basis. We have extended invitation to one of the pre-K leaders so that she can be part of that conversation. We're also looking at service delivery, frequency, duration, so on and so forth, among buildings, because there's some inconsistency there, so we're trying to shore that up a little bit. Also, strategy 7, that's the creating consistent standards to guide pre-referral, referral, and evaluation procedures. What we've been doing is shifting some of the, empowering buildings, shifting some of the roles, responsibilities that the district CSE chair has had, and shifting it to buildings, so more decisions are being made at the building level. I'm thinking of manifestation determinations, for example, instead of them all happening at the district level, having them at at the high school or the middle schools. Also looking at the whole referrals. Instead of the district CSE department, the special education department be the gatekeeper, really empowering buildings to start looking at referrals, who are they referring, what data, looking at their RTI process, what interventions have been tried, progress monitoring, and so forth. So again, empowering buildings to really look at the kids that they are, struggling with either academically or behaviorally, instead of just moving everything up to the district level and having us make the decision. They know the kids. We provide some guidance. Obviously, I'm on the phone a lot with a lot of my principal colleagues. We problem solve a lot about certain kids that they are struggling with, what to do, and so on and so forth. So I think that's been very helpful. We need to continue to work on providing supports to teams so that they have the knowledge base and they have they're comfortable with it. They become more comfortable making those kinds of decisions. So I think that's very helpful, again, shifting things from the district level to the building level.
A significant shift, Sheila. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the board recognizes that we're sharing a lot of qualitative information tonight. Last spring, the quantitative data shocked us all. And I said then that we needed to put a lot of structures in place and do a lot to start to shift those numbers. And so we realized we aren't coming to you tonight with a bunch of numbers that have changed all of a sudden. Well, one, we haven't had enough time, but we have had time to put some significant structures and things in place to allow for those numbers to change over time. And quite frankly, some of these things, particularly shifting the decisions and accountability down to the building level, are huge. And we've done those in a matter of months and provide professional development, staff development, and conversation and communication associated with it. So I'm hoping you're getting a sense, and you're equally as shocked, but in a good way, of how much has happened since we had that initial conversation last spring.
Right. I had a building principal just the other day ask for trend data for students with disabilities in his or her building, 3-year trend data. And that was great because clearly these conversations were happening at that building level. And we're going to be having conversations at the monthly principal meetings to talk about what does that look like. Eligibility criteria, when do you make the determination that a child should be referred to CSE, and so on and so forth. So it's a work in progress, but very hopeful. We've had some really, I think, very, very in-depth conversations about the whole evaluation process.
One last thing. With this move towards inclusion and addressing those issues, I started thinking about it and talking it as a civil rights issue. And when you put it in that context and you take a look historically, how long it's taken us to get as far as it has in civil rights, voter registration, desegregation of schools, and we're still dealing in our schools when we look at the disaggregated analysis with performance of students of color. And then you take a look at inclusion when Public Law 94-142 just came about in 1974, and we're still pushing that wheel. I think we have to look at all that stuff in that historical context and do some coalition building in terms of bringing about the change, because I think there's shared goals, and that's a place at the table for everybody.
We would like to take the special out of education and make it inclusive education for every student. Wouldn't that be good that we didn't have to say special education, but inclusive education, which includes everyone, and that we adapt to their needs? So that's what this plan is hoping to do. That's what we're hoping to generate. And there's an interest there, and there's a desire, and it will happen.
Other questions? Anything? Anything else, Dr. Brown?
I'm just trying to figure out a way to address this small school in Virginia comment, but other than that, maybe now that's time that I would like to announce that from that small school in Virginia, we have a person with a doctorate now from that place, Mr. Dr. Landau. Successfully defended his dissertation at that small school in Virginia, otherwise known as the University of Virginia. And we're so proud of him. So congratulations, Dr. Landau.
I always get, Matt, I always get confused with UVA, and because their colors are really similar to like. All right. Bob to the Hokies, the Virginia Tech, but I always get them confused. They really look like the same unis to me, but I'm just. I sit in the back. I don't really know. So.
That's inclusive.
Yeah. So. From what I heard, still lots of work to do. Work in progress. Plans are being made. We're going to keep pushing forward. So we're good. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And item C is 100 years of policy. No, it's 100 series. I can't see very well. 100 series policy. So Sean, we have some policies on the.
We do.
Yeah, they're coming.
Paper.
There is a November 8th meeting under policy committee.
You want to connect?
I do.
I got that. Okay. We have paper. We have adapting.
Got a ream here.
It was right on cue that the good high school folks would be leaving, but I should say I, like a number of probably other board members, have spent some time in the high school. Mr. Powers and I had a chance to sort of do a little quick tour of the day, and I want to reiterate to folk what a different feel the high school has this year. And I don't know, I've spent considerable time in the high school, and I haven't seen it like this in a short period of time. And if you haven't spent some time in the high school, I recommend that you walk through. Beyond the facilities, it just feels like a different building in many regards.
So, Sean, during our walkthroughs, I guess I couldn't describe it any better than it was an academic environment. Was that?
That's a good way of saying it. Yes.
That was the feeling that I got. That's
what we're going at. Excellence in academics.
So, Rob tried to say that there is a, what would you say, 1,000 years of policy is probably correct?
So it was the 100 years war thing, but 100 years policy.
As folks may know, you've been hearing us say it before, we're in the process of having our entire city policy book updated and, much more importantly, digitized and turning it into a searchable engine as well through the collaboration of the New York State School Board Association. And so for the past year now, we've been sort of going through various policies, and we think we're finally able to start providing the board and some consecutive meetings with what we're calling series of policies. And so what the board will find under in the Dropbox of the Policy Committee November 8th, which is up here, and I think we have some paper copies somewhere available for folks traveling around as well, for those folks in the public, is the policy known as the 100 series. It includes, if I'm not mistaken, 7 policies and 2 regulations. Some of this work we've already done, and so tonight's goal is just to have a first reading of these policies. There'll be plenty of time to make suggestions, recommendations, to wordsmith, etc. But some of these policies have also already made it through the ranks. So, for example, if you don't mind, the idea would be just to go through the policies one by one, to get a quick conversation, and then move from there.
Can I move this whole policy series?
You can. I still prefer that we just have a quick conversation about each one and not that it's a long dialogue. So, for example, policy 0000, this board has already approved within the past month. So we don't necessarily need to have any conversation about that. Just to give you an update, that we've already that's the policy we've just passed. That will be included in the 100 series. If we go to policy 0100. This is a policy on equal opportunity and non-discrimination. Mr. Bobby and Karen and I will be working over the next week and a half to do some quick wordsmithing. And if board members have particular concerns, recommendations, questions, etc., I'd ask that you email those to me, including anyone in the public who may have concerns, questions, or recommendations. Jay?
So some of these things have an adoption date, but the first one doesn't?
The first one should, and that's an error on our end. We'll make sure that gets fixed. The policy 0000 we adopted in October.
And so not seeing it on 0100?
0100 has not been adopted. It's a new policy that we're being asked to look at. And it also includes not just policy 0100, but regulation, right? So 0100-R, which is included that, which is the regulations for equal opportunity and non-discrimination. Which follows that, right? Yeah. So if board members have questions about that, please feel free to let me know. Send me a message and I'll update you on any additions, changes, etc. that Bob and Karen and I go through. The next policy is policy 0115. And this is in essence lifted directly from policies that we've already adopted. We, unfortunately, given some of our board clerk transition, passed this policy previously as policy 1115 and 1115R. And now you're seeing it as it should be correctly labeled as 0115.
So it's just a renumber?
Just a renumbering and pulled directly from the Student Code of Conduct, but it's already been adopted.
Next.
Policy 0300. Which is accountability. We had some extensive conversation at the policy committee. This has not been adopted. This is a new policy. It's not a required policy. You'll see, according to the top right-hand corner, it's a local policy and a notice policy. And the conversation was about giving the community notice that the board takes accountability seriously and requests regular updates, data reports, information, etc. from the superintendent on achieving district goals and measures. So it's a very short policy. You can see saying that those are the ways in which we'll work on it. And we had some conversation, oh, not this one, I apologize. We have no conversation about that yet.
And Sean, it is helpful for, I'm not sure whether we did this before, but the required local notice, it is good to note what is a local policy, what has been required from state ed or others, right?
And the 100 series is almost all notice or local policies. Right. Most of these beyond equal opportunity and sexual harassment are not required by New York State law. Questions about 0300? 0310, which is a board evaluation, self-evaluation policy, and you can see it here. It's again, it's also pretty short. It's also a local policy. In essence, this is a new policy for the board, saying the board will engage in an annual self-evaluation as part of an annual board development. This is not an evaluation of district procedures that we would talk about how we do work together as a board. This is recommended from NISBA.
And as the policy states, an evaluation of the board, not the individuals that happen to sit
That's right.
at any one time.
Yep. and we did do some wordsmithing on these pretty extensively, right? To try to figure out how we're going to be much more collaborative in writing our policies. And I should tell folks at home as well, one of the conversations we've been having, that I've been having, I don't want to, Judy Maxwell and Pat Wasloo are my phenomenal policy committee members, but one of our attempts has been to simplify our policies as much as possible as well. So to take language out and not make them legalese or verbose, right? Just try to get to the point of what we're trying to accomplish. And so this is an example of 3 paragraphs that simply captures what we're saying we're engaging in a board of self-evaluation. Questions about that, board members?
One question.
Yes, please.
Are we information? Are we the only group in the district who completely self-evaluate?
I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know.
We're the only group that is elected by the community. All others are hired. So that's every year there's an evaluation of a third of the board, I suppose. Well, I mean, you know, just...
No, that's a good point.
And it's also to say that just because we don't have a policy does not preclude us from doing other forms of evaluation. We've had that conversation before as well. So what we're saying in essence is not to say evaluating the board's effectiveness, but the idea of the policy is much more how the board engages and tries to be productive to get its work done. Right, so that's sort of how are we working together to make this stuff happen is the idea of the self-evaluation.
And whether it's, well, I'm not sure, Sean, I mean, would it be useful and proper to have the district evaluate the board in some way? Boy, I don't know.
I tried to promote that idea last year, and I'll come back to it at some point in time. I don't think we need a policy for that to happen, but I think that's something we should entertain about how we get feedback. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Q Public, but he's got to have some ideas of how this might work in other districts. I mean, Clicker Guy, I don't have any idea.
Oh, well, the wheels are turning over here.
I do have something to offer. The Board of Education priorities and the metrics is a way to do that, and embedding that in the superintendent's evaluation, and maybe potentially doing a joint evaluation based on the metrics is one way I've seen it done. The superintendent can do it alone. I've seen that done also. That didn't work well.
Appreciate your input on that.
So just as a point of clarification, let me also say that in reviewing our old policy book, which was somewhat haphazard and a mess, there were a number of things that we were being required to do that we weren't actually doing. And so bear in mind, any policy we add, we'll have to sort of keep a running list of what we're expected to be doing each year and things that we have not sort of been keeping up with. So we can engage in those kinds of forms of evaluation. But that adds more to our, right, that we may not need a policy to make those evaluations happen, is what I'm trying to say. Right? So the idea would be, though, annually we would engage in some board development together, and that's the idea of this policy. And I think that's recommended by NISBA and how to sort of maintain good board dynamics.
But if we do have a policy, and we do have regulations that flow out of that policy, and we expect others to abide by those policies, the community, you would hold that we as a board need to be held accountable as well. Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So if there's not more questions, I'll move on to policy 0320. This is evaluation of the superintendent. And what we did in policy committee, again, this is also a local policy, but trying to inform the public and the community that we'd be evaluating the superintendent on an annual basis. And we went through and we borrowed language directly from, not directly, we modified language from the contract to make sure that the policy we have in place here is not inconsistent with the current superintendent's contract. This policy and any superintendent contract we know can be changed. So if we change superintendents or change the contract, we can always change the policy and modify it as such. But the one shift that may be important for folks to realize is that we said gauge the progress, the first purpose of the evaluation would be to gauge the progress towards the district's goals and priorities mutually agreed upon by the board and superintendent. The way in which it came down from NISBA was that the board would set the priorities. And we thought we were trying to do a much more collaborative exercise in our district. And that if we're in the superintendent's contract, if it says that we will mutually agree upon those metrics, we thought the evaluations would do the same thing. And so beyond that, there's very little wordsmithing else from NISBA. Does that work? And NISBA wanted us to identify a date, and we felt that given the fact that we have such transitions between the election and beginning of the school year, that having a date on there may not serve our purposes. The fact is we're doing it annually, there will always be an annual evaluation on file. You're shaking your head, Jay.
I don't want a date.
Yes, right. And that's exactly, we've already been running into those problems. So that's again of us simplifying our policy, but just identifying it will be annually, and we hold ourselves to that annual. And by the way, as for the public to know, for the community to know, there is a date stipulated in most of the contracts anyway. And so whether or not we're stipulated by the policy, we're bound by dates by our contracts to begin with. So there'll be a date on it one way or the other. We're just not mandating it in the policy. Fantastic. You're all making this easy. Yeah. Today, it's the first reading. I know, I should have realized that. And that's it. That's a repeat. So those are policies.
How do you want us to get these on the table?
The idea will be next week, or each policy has to be approved individually. We're bringing them to you as a series so you can sort of see what it looks like. The policy that we've already approved will keep on the agenda, but they won't be voting. And the only ones we'll be voting on next time would be 0100, 011. 0300, 0310, 0320.
Do we need a motion to move any of these into the first reading?
Yeah, today, we should move them and table them for the next meeting.
And I would abstain.
I think he wants to do it.
Yes.
But I think
I don't know what I'm doing, but there's some numbers that...
For clarity, I mean, that's always been the question, can we do a series or do we have to do individually as we move them now?
I think for today we can move the entire series. I think when it comes to the official adoption, we'd probably be wise just for history just to go one by one.
Just to be clear, we've kind of been around this before, but so everyone's on the same page. Go ahead, Seth.
I move the entire 0 series, 100 series of policies and regulations that have been attached to our packet for this evening's meeting.
All items A through I without subtractions, right? Okay.
Second.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A quick piece, and we'll make sure we'll ask Jen to somehow upload all these onto our website as well, so folks can have access to them.
Sure. Hopefully we'll be able to do that through the public Dropbox.
Fantastic.
And I'll move they all be tabled for a second reading at the next meeting.
I'll second.
Do we?
You vote on tabling.
Yes. Yeah, we vote on tabling. We're not voting. That they've been moved, and now they're going to vote on the tabling of these items. All in favor? That's everyone. Okay. Very good.
We'll see you all for a second reading.
We're going to have one whole series done.
Thank you.
Judy, come on.
Thank you, Policy Committee, Judy, Pat, and Sean, as always.
In this last meeting, we were blessed with the presence of Seth Peacock, so we should get some credit for not saying anything.
Did Seth make it through the whole?
You make it through the whole meeting?
Yeah, the harder meeting was the second time hearing about them.
It kind of ruins all the fun, right? Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore. I'm making friends.
Other business by board members, superintendent. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, but with finance and facilities next on the 26th at 6 p.m. And we didn't comment at all that we hosted a meeting of the Central New York School Boards Association on consolidations and mergers of school districts. And while we didn't, we're not talking with anybody about that, we wanted it out there as to what it means, what it could mean for districts. There were a good number represented there, and I thought it was a pretty good conversation. Many of us were there. So I thought it was a good conversation to hear the challenges.
It was a subject that was, well, I'm not going to say center stage, but certainly touched by the Commissioner of Education at the New York State School Boards Association annual convention in Rochester. He mentioned it again, mentioned the uproar that he caused when he mentioned it a year ago in Buffalo, and they had a similar meeting at the convention regarding consolidations and mergers, and so it was. We certainly appreciate Central New York School Boards Association having a meeting down here locally. I have the opportunity to sit on the board president's roundtable, which Central New York has up in the middle of the state, but really there's very, very few local districts that take part in that. So it's an opportunity for them to push their programs down here. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of districts that are under a lot of pressure, and what's next, and that's what we've been asking as a small city district with many rural districts near us that are in pretty tough times. What does the future look like for some of the districts, some of our neighbors, and so it was another good.
It was good to hear the challenges that the commissioner has trying to move those things forward, especially understanding that trying to make the conversation about children instead of the conversation about adults is clearly the biggest challenge in any merger or consolidation.
yeah, there's no panacea, no easy answer. The commissioner, I mentioned the State School Boards Association meeting. I guess what I took away from that meeting and the commissioner's remarks on that Friday was that there's no white knight from Albany that is going to come, and if you have issues, it is up to the local level to figure it out, solve your problems, solve the issues, and it's always been a question of how much local controls school boards, school districts still have. Well, the solutions, as we've talked about, Dr. Brown, they're in the room. They're not really at the federal level. They're not at the state level. It's in this room. It's in every school district in upstate, downstate. We have to determine the future of public education and not others. So that's what my takeaway from the convention. Anyway. Judy, go ahead, and then Jay.
And there are 3 dates on here for curriculum. We meet Thursday this week.
4:30?
At 4:30. And we meet the 27th at 4:30.
Okay.
And we meet the 18th.
Not the 13th.
Yes, not the 13th.
So lots of curriculum meetings coming up.
So, I thought it was Wednesday the 14th.
Yeah, I thought it was Wednesday.
It's tomorrow.
Oh, it is Wednesday the 14th. Sorry. Yeah.
Say that again. It's Wednesday the 14th.
November 14th.
November 14th.
27th and December 18th.
That's what she said. 2 curriculum in November?
Yeah, because we're doing, tomorrow is the game, Imagine Learning, and then the other is what we had originally planned to do, right? Right? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Curriculum's rocking. They got a lot going on. So tomorrow's meeting, actually, that would be a good meeting to check out if you have the opportunity. Jay, go ahead.
I couldn't get, I went to the music event that the district sponsored at the Performing Arts. Did anybody, how did it go? Nobody here could get to it?
The Saturday event, the regional one,
Right.
I didn't get a chance to go, but I heard great things. There were a couple of events happening that day. And
Yeah.
Parking was hard to come by anywhere in this area. We had
right, yeah.
Turkey Shoot, I believe, and
Right.
then the regional musical event. And both of them I heard went very, very well.
Those are the all-state.
Yeah, the all-state.
Right.
Okay. Great. Go ahead, Sean.
Just a small correction. The policy committee meeting on November 29th should be at 5 p.m. Am I right, committee members? Not 6 p.m.?
Right. Man, alive. Sorry about that.
So we'll get corrected, scheduling the hours?
And on the 27th.
In HR, we discussed meeting on Wednesday, November 28th at 5 p.m. We were going to move our second meeting of the month from a Tuesday to a Wednesday so it won't conflict with curriculum.
Yes.
And it was waiting on.
To talk to the chair.
Yeah, it's waiting on.
Actually, that works.
Good.
Good.
Better.
Just want to get that out to the public.
Public, there it is.
Great.
Well, the public missed it over there.
Sorry. What did we decide, Pat?
Eldred says Wednesday the 28th is at 5 is good for HR.
November.
November 28th. It's going to be a busy week.
So lots of meetings, lots of fun. There we go. All right.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Without objection, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you. We're done.
Excellent.